Have you ever stared at the label on your drink and felt like you needed a secret decoder ring just to figure it out? Well, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to crack the code and dive deep into the surprisingly complex world of beverage labels.
So let's kick things off with a little mystery you've probably seen before. You grab, say, a 20-ounce soda, you flip it over, and wait, there are two columns of nutrition facts. Is that a typo, a printing error? No way. It's totally intentional. And by the time we're done here, you'll know exactly why.
You see, to make sense of any of this, you have to know which rule book the drink is playing by. And for the most part, it boils down to a tale of two continents. You've got the rules for the United States, and then you have a whole different playbook for the EU and the UK.
Our mission here isn't just to play a game of spot the difference. Nope. We're going to get into the why behind it all. Because once you understand the logic, you're not just a shopper anymore. You're an informed consumer, and that's a real superpower.
And this right here, this is the absolute core of it. In the US, everything, and I mean everything, is built around the idea of a serving size. But a serving of soda is different from a serving of juice, right? So it can get tricky. Meanwhile, over in the EU and the UK, they just said, forget that, we're using one standard for everything. 100 milliliters. It makes comparing products so much easier. That one difference in philosophy changes everything.
All right, let's jump into our first big battleground, caffeine. Whether it's your morning energy drink or your afternoon soda, you might be surprised to learn how differently the rules treat that little kick in your can.
See, in the EU and the UK, they've drawn a very clear line in the sand. If a drink has more than 150 milligrams of caffeine per liter, it officially gets a special name, a high caffeine beverage. And once it gets that label, a whole new set of rules gets triggered. The only exception, things that are obviously coffee or tea. And wow, this chart just lays it all out. In the US, a company can tell you how many milligrams of caffeine are in your drink, but they don't have to. It's totally voluntary. But in the EU and UK, the second that drink crosses the high caffeine line, boom, it becomes mandatory. No choice.
And they are not messing around with these rules. Just look at how specific this is. They tell you the exact warming you have to use. You have to list the caffeine content in milligrams per 100 milliliters, and you can't just bury it in the fine print on the back. It has to be right there in the same field of vision as the name of the drink. It's all about making that information impossible to miss.
Okay, let's switch gears from the buzz of caffeine to the sweet stuff, sugar. Now, this is another area where a simple phrase like sugar-free can actually mean two slightly different things, depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on. So in the US, the sugar-free claim is tied to that serving size we talked about, what the FDA officially calls the reference amount customarily consumed. It basically means that to be called sugar-free, your drink has to have less than half a gram of sugar in one of those official servings.
And here's the flip side. In the EU and UK, they don't care about a variable serving size. They go back to that simple, fixed standard. A drink is sugar-free if it has no more than half a gram of sugar per 100 milliliters, period. It makes it so much easier to do a true apples-to-apples comparison between two totally different drinks.
Now, here's a fascinating little wrinkle in the US rules. Let's say a product is sugar-free, but it's still packed with calories from, I don't know, other things like fats or certain sugar alcohols. Well, it might have to carry this exact disclaimer. It's the government's way of saying, hey, just because we said sugar-free, don't automatically assume it's low-cal.
Okay, you ready? Remember that mystery from the very beginning? The soda with the two columns of nutrition facts? Well, this number, 200%, is the magic key that unlocks the whole thing. And there it is. The FDA is smart. They know that if you buy a 20-ounce bottle, you're probably going to drink that whole thing in one go, right? Even if the official serving size is just 12 ounces. So they made a rule. If a single package contains between 2 and 3 times the standard serving, the manufacturer must show you the numbers for one serving and for the entire container right next to each other. Mystery solved.
So far, we've been talking about drinks covered by the FDA. But now, let's talk about alcohol. For things like beer, wine, and spirits in the US, we basically have to throw that FDA rulebook out the window. We're stepping into a whole different regulatory world.
Everybody meet the TTB. In the United States, this is the agency that's the gatekeeper for what has to appear on a bottle of wine or a can of beer. This is a huge difference from the EU and UK, where alcohol is generally covered by the same food rules as everything else. But here, the TTB has its own unique checklist.
So instead of a detailed nutrition panel, the TTB has this list of must-haves. You need the brand name, the type of alcohol, the alcohol by volume, and of course, that famous government health warning, which has to be printed exactly as written. But notice what's not on this list: ingredients, allergens. Things that are mandatory on most food and drink labels in the EU are generally not required here.
Now, it's super important to remember that none of this stuff is set in stone. These rules are living documents. They are constantly changing and evolving based on new science, on shifting public health priorities. What's true today might be different tomorrow.
And this timeline just shows you how fast things can move. Just in 2023, the U.S. added sesame to its list of major food allergens. There's a proposal on the table right now for an alcohol facts panel in the U.S., maybe by 2025. And get this, starting in 2026, Ireland is rolling out some of the toughest alcohol warnings in the world, linking it to cancer right on the bottle. The label on your shelf in 5 years could look totally different.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground. So what's the big takeaway here? What do you need to remember next time you're standing in that beverage aisle trying to decide what to buy? Let's boil it all down. This is basically your cheat sheet. When you think caffeine, remember, it's voluntary in the US, but mandatory with a warning in the EU and UK if it's high caffeine. When you see sugar-free, think, is it based on a US serving size or the EU/UK standard 100 ml? And for alcohol, you've got the standard US federal warning versus a future of much more specific warnings coming out of Europe. This is your decoder ring. So the next time you pick up a can or a bottle, I want you to take just one extra second. Look past the cool logo and the flashy marketing. You now have the tools to actually read the code. You know what the label is really trying to tell you. The only question is, what story will you find? Thanks for joining us.